For some time now, I've been struggling with the concepts that Marx lays down as the groundwork in Kapital and trying to process them. And for that reason, I haven't managed to get past the first few pages, but I've done an analysis on trying to make sense of what I have read, and this is what I've come up with. So when I got up this morning, first thing I did was write it down as a type of essay, as a kind of essay, if you like, and I've called it Marx the Magician. And this explains, in my mind, and clarifies what he's going on about, which is necessary for the understanding of the book or the volumes. So this is Marx the Magician. Marx says commodities have quality and quantity. Quality he calls use value, and there's a German word for that which I need to look up to see what exactly it means in German, because it was written in German and this is the translation. So you got use value, which equates to quality or the substance of a value. He calls it use value, and value itself he calls equates that to the magnitude of it, of value or quantity of something. So it's a bit confusing the terms he uses, because we're used to thinking of quality and quantity, whereas he uses use value and value. So first thing to do is to get the terms clear, and then it's not plain sailing, but not quite as rough seas from there. So quality he calls use value or substance of value, and quantity he calls the magnitude of value. And then he says there's a third quality which they all have in common, all these commodities, which is exchange value. And exchange value is the relationship of a commodity with another commodity in terms of magnitudes of something else. He says that they all must have something in common if they can be exchanged, and he calls this labour. And then he says that the sum of all these values is social labour. That's global labour, if you like, the whole sum of total of labour. And so social labour, which is the sum of all individual labours, which itself he reckons is the inherent exchange quality each object has in the world put together. It then parcels it up and divides it into units of common labour, on the grounds he's saying that all labour is equal. So I'm just wondering, have you seen the trick yet? Because all labour is not equal, and it can't be. 1 hour of a doctor's time is worth more than 1 hour of a nurse's, and which in turn is worth more than 1 hour of a receptionist's. And why? Because they themselves, if we look in terms of labour, as he's looking at, have to be seen as commodities of labour by which other people have expended in them in their training. So each of them has different amounts of labour invested in them. So it takes more labour to train a doctor than a nurse. But Marx flattens it all into one single homogeneous agglomeration of social labour that he all put together. He calls the wealth of society, and then he divides it up into into these units of homogeneous human labour. So he stuck it all together in one big lump, and then pulled bits off it and said this is all the same. I hope you can see the ruse now. Then he says if it's worth if something's worth 10 units of his type of labour, another one's worth 20, then you can get 2 of these for 1 of these. And he's doing all this on the grounds that everything's equal. because it's equal now because he's mixed it all together. So yeah, I mean, colour's another one. You mix all the colours together, you lose the individual colours. So you stick I mean, white's every colour. You stick you pull a bit of white paint out, and you say, well, there's some yellow paint for you because yellow paint went into the making of it. That's the way he's arguing. So how does he answer this criticism? Well, pretty much the same as I've said, but in his own words, you might like to hear how he answers it. So he postulates the problem as such. Some people might think that if the value of a commodity is determined by the quality of labour spent on it, the more idle and unskillful a labourer, the more valuable would be his commodity because more time would be required in the production. That's the problem. And so what's his solution? You've got to spot the gear change on this. No human intervention necessary. Oh, that's my words. Yeah, it appears like he's doing all this by magic. It's some kind of magician here. Right. This is the nub of it. This is the big con. He says the labour, however, that forms the substance of value is homogeneous human labour. Note, big capital letters should be there. I would put them in big capital letters, but he hasn't. But that definitely should be. Note the term homogeneous human labour. Expenditure of one uniform labour power. Notice homogeneous, one uniform. Things that are different, he's now calling homogeneous, one uniform. So there you have it. He's taken all the different kinds of labour and he's mixed them all together, put them in his own big vat, and then he's, which he's calling social labour, and then he's pulling off bits of it to sell you. It doesn't matter what kind of labour you're looking for, you're saying that this is all the same now. Imagine going to a pub and asking for a whiskey, and the barman says, there's a drink. You say, well, that's not whiskey. The barman says, well, it is, it's got whiskey in it. You say, but yeah, but I asked for a whiskey. So it doesn't matter, it's still whiskey because it's got whiskey in it. Even though it might be in a bigger glass. And then another customer comes in and says, well, I want a beer. So he serves him the same drink in the same size glass. And the customer says, well, I want a beer. I asked for a beer. Yeah, it's a beer. It's got beer in it. But even though, and then this customer gets half a pint instead of a pint. So even the quantities are the same. So he's reduced everything to this one common denominator. Reductio ad absurdio, is the term for it. Sums it up neatly. Can't be done like that. I mean, what about if you find? What about gold? What about the Mona Lisa? How much labour went into that? So what makes that so valuable? Where does this feature in Marx's theory? I have to say I haven't read it all yet, but it doesn't look like he's going to address that. I could be wrong though. So when he's done this, by doing this, he's not only assuming all men to be equal, or people to be equal if you like, but that their labour is equal as well. And today what we have is cultural Marxism, which is a form of Marxism based on economic Marxism, which is the original Marxism, which in turn stems from Hegelism. But this is now being taken one stage further into cultural Marxism, in saying that not only is human labour the same, but all cultures are the same, everybody's the same. And this is where wokeism has its roots from Marxism. And amongst other things. And this is the kind of uniform, one-size-fits-all utopian nightmare we're heading into now, where there is no more individuality. We're all controlled by the state. The state decides what we do, what we can't do, and we're all the same. We're all units of labour, or even further, units of people, units of the great person. So you can see how this dystopian nightmare has developed, and I hope you know it makes a bit more sense as to what's going on in the world if you didn't know this already. So thanks for listening. I hope I've been of some service by explaining this.